Welcome to Kiki's Chat Show. Today, 9th December 2020, the year of our Lord 2020. So much has happened, so much is still happening. We're getting vaccines, we're being told conflicting information. So the vaccine has become something that's called in law caveat emptor, buyer beware. It's up to you what you want to do with it. It's up to you how you want to live. And it's up to you how you think that this vaccine is going to work for you or not. But whatever it is, good luck to every choice everyone makes. Today we're talking about domestic violence, and I must say that I have always, every year, I talk about domestic violence twice. Once before Christmas holidays and once in the Easter holidays. I do this because that is the time when a lot of people spend time together. So we have touched on it during our lockdown. But this is a time I normally do domestic violence, and therefore I am continuing in that vein. The topic, domestic violence, is a wide topic. And today we're dealing with physical and emotional abuse. I am sure a lot of you have experienced it, if you will admit to it. And some of you may not admit to it because you do not understand what is emotional. You think domestic abuse may be just being hit, so the physical side, but that is not it. There are different angles of abuse, and the violent side, which is the physical, and sometimes the emotional, is what we're going to talk about today. Now, this show, and I have to add this disclaimer on there, that this show is not to slander or attack anyone. It is a toolbar being used to open a discussion that we have, especially, and I use the word especially, among African men. Now, domestic abuse, physical abuse, and all of this happens, it's worldwide. It happens everywhere. But my interest is for the African in the diaspora, and in fact, the African at home. Now, we have this strange patriarchal leadership, which empowers people to do terrible things to women or children. Terrible things to the people that they're supposed to be taking care of. Now, we really have to look at it because it's the elephant in the room. It is something that is happening all the time that is being put underneath the carpet. But this time, this is the time of realization. COVID has given us the opportunity to address things that make us uncomfortable. The fact that life, as some people say, is short, and therefore we should become aware of our surroundings, things that are happening to us, etc., etc. Women are crying, and unfortunately, our men seem deafened because they may be in the power, and this is not one of the important things they want to deal with. However, we will have to deal with it ourselves. Now, one of the things that I talk about this year is self-love factor, self-worth factor, safety factor, building yourself for getting back into the working world outside. Now, while you are inside, you need to sort yourself out so that by the time you come outside, you're a better equipped person. This show is for women by women, but men can listen and enjoy, and they can learn a few things. So women, I am addressing you. My guest and I are going to address you. Now, men, this is your learning curve. If you identify any of the things we are about to talk about, which you do, advise yourself. Because we are in a time when we need to be kind to each other. Without too much talking, I will introduce my guest. My guest today is Georgette Ami DJABA. She's been on here before. This is her third go, isn't it?
Yes.
This is her third time of visiting me on my show, Kiki's Chat Show. And she has worked as an executive assistant researcher to the Right Honourable Paul Boateng in the House of Commons in England. She's a qualified solicitor of the Supreme Court of England and Wales, and she has dealt with several local government departments in London and in private practice. She has expertise in immigration and nationality, family and child protection, and it's the family and child protection part why she is here. Good evening.
Good evening, Kiki.
I want to welcome you formally onto my show again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And a warm welcome to all your listeners all over the world.
Thank you. Listeners, she's greeting you. Now, what I want us to talk about, or what I want us to do straight away without much ado, is to identify the different types of domestic abuse. Now, when we say domestic, it means what's happening inside your house, basically. So, can you identify them? Give us all the types of domestic abuse.
Thank you. We've got various types, and it doesn't always happen in the household. It could happen in a care home as well, so long as we're aware. We've got one, physical abuse. This is when a person is being battered and bruised, beaten up, basically, punched. And then we've got emotional abuse. We've got sexual abuse, neglect, financial abuse. We've also got cultural abuse. We've got child abuse, which is a separate topic on its own. And we've got sexual abuse. Up until a few years ago, sexual abuse within marriage wasn't considered a crime, but it's actually a crime, believe it or not. So the main types of abuse is what I have stated. So we're looking at the physical, emotional, sexual abuse, financial abuse, neglect, child abuse, cultural abuse. There's even spiritual abuse as well. Yes.
Right. Today we're going to talk about physical and emotional because those two are intertwined. Now,
That's
physical is so terrible because people end up being killed. And this is not a myth or a tale or anything. It's real. It is real. People end up being killed because he hit you once today, he hit you twice, he hits you again, and then in the end, you're dead. The other thing the reason why we think it is intertwined and why we're going to talk about it is because he hits you once, he says, it's your fault. He hits you twice, he says, you see, this is what you keep doing. And I get angry. Now, you and I know that is not allowed. That the hitting once, the fact that he says it is your fault, that's emotional. Now,
that's right.
How?
I wanted to add a couple of things. There's also digital abuse. We're talking about online abuse. There's forced marriage, harassment or stalking, and female genital mutilation, which still goes on in certain parts of the world.
Yeah. All of that is terrible abuse. Now let's stay with physical and emotional.
Yes.
My question to you is, how do you identify that this is not play and this is serious physical abuse, which could escalate into something else?
Anything that constitutes a threat or pain, anything that causes pain, is abuse. If it's uncomfortable, it's abuse. So we're looking at, in a household, you can get somebody give you a slap on the face or any part of your body, which is unwanted. That is abuse. Anybody punching you, kicking you, that is abuse. It may or may not cause a bruise on you.
So then what do you do?
The first thing that
What
a
do you do
person
when you
the first thing that a person must do is try and avoid being punched in the first place. If an argument is escalating, one of you has to walk out. If I say walk out of the door, breathe in, walk around the block maybe for an hour or so, and then calm down. Because whilst you're in the household, if tensions escalate, people can pick up a weapon, they can pick up a bottle, and it can get quite nasty. So before it escalates, you try and diffuse the situation. If you're shouting, try not to shout. That's the first thing. If you're in danger, you have to call 999. You have to dial the police. It's quite important. If you feel that
why
you're
should
in
you not
danger,
shout? If the person is hitting you, or why are you saying try not to shout? I don't get that part.
well,
Because I would shout.
if you're having a, what I would say, banter with your partner or your husband or somebody that you're caring for, normally when you start talking, if there's an argument, it escalates when you both raise voices. But if you're under threat, say he's about to kill you with a weapon, then of course you can scream for help. But normally when you, is the tone that you use that tends to escalate any argument, if you know what I mean.
It's the tone you
Rather than start shouting back at him or her, what you do is walk out of the door, if it's possible to do that, because sometimes you're locked in. Sometimes the situation is such that you can't walk out. For example, maybe you've got a baby, you're breastfeeding. So there are very different scenarios where a person cannot walk out. But the reason why I say walk out is this: you're not going to stay in the household and let him beat you up. So it's best to try and have an exit plan.
Okay, so exit plan. That is one thing. The other thing is, I think you should shout. I think that if you are hit, if you're playing
This
and
is
there's
before you're
one,
hit. Before, what I'm talking about is before you are hit.
okay.
Yes.
So before you are hit, don't shout. That's what,
If you can, walk out instead. You can walk out and shout outside. But you see, once you're in there, it can escalate whatever argument that you're having. Because something very small can be magnified simply by the tone, the language, and the pitch. It's just the way it is.
okay, so the tone, the language, and the pitch. Okay,
Yes.
so we've gone beyond tone, language, pitch. He's hit you a few times. This is, you've been married for 5 years. He's always beating you up when you have a disagreement. So what do you then do now from that point onwards? Because you see, a lot of people are being battered at home,
Yes.
but they do not have the solution of how to get out. What do you do? How do you address the issue and get out of the situation and call someone or deal with it? Who do you call? How do you do this?
Okay. There are different scenarios that we can look at. We can look at case studies. What it is we are brought up in a culture that says that a woman has to be submissive to her husband.
Okay.
And it's part of Christian principles that we tend to follow. So if you're being hit, you've been married for 5 years or you've been living together, cohabiting for 5 years, and he hits you, you need to report it. Your first point of call would be to seek advice either with victim support, domestic violence unit, the Metropolitan Police. The worst place that you can go to is either one of members of your family or even your pastor, because unless he's qualified, if I say qualified, he's a professional therapist, psychologist, he's not going to be able to help you. Because what they tend to do is to say, go back. Does he feed you? Does he look after you? Go back and try and deal with it. So they put you back in the same situation that you have, or you're trying to run away from. So there are lots of helplines that we will give at the end of the session. But I actually wanted to break it down by going through the definition of domestic abuse, because it doesn't always constitute violence, and then bring it down gently to where you go to, because sometimes you have to run out, sometimes you have to seek refuge, sometimes you need to contact the local authority for temporary accommodation, sometimes you need to go to a hostel or a hotel. So each situation is different, but there is the National Domestic Violence Helpline that will provide you with a handbook, which is free, provide you with all the information that you need for you to make a decision whether you're going to stay with a friend or somebody that you can trust, who's not going to betray you. Because you can be in a friend's house and then they could call your partner, your husband, or the perpetrator, and they can come and find you. And these days, sometimes they can track your phone. So you have to be very careful where you go to when you're facing physical abuse.
Domestic violence.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we've dealt with the different types, and we want to just stay with physical and emotional. And I feel that sometimes it starts with emotional before it gets physical, and then emotional balances the physical, and it can continue for years. So let's stay on that level, and then we can talk about other types later on. One of the things, the question that I know people want to know is to be able to identify what is happening to them. And when they do identify it, they can get out of that situation. This year already, we've had a pastor in America. He threatened his wife that he would kill her in front. Have you got something around something moving about around or your speaker is touching your clothing or something?
Is it?
So anyway,
I can take the speaker off. Has it?
No, the sound has stopped. It stopped.
Okay.
Anyway, so the pastor killed his wife. Before Barbara. He did that, he had told them that he had told her in front of her family that he's going to kill her, etc., etc. And even though they knew that he was an evil man and they knew that he was capable, they didn't think he was capable of killing her until he actually did. Now, I can give you scenarios of people who have been married to men who, when they tell other people how they feel, people don't believe them. I know people who have been in situations where she's telling her mother, her sister, whoever, and they're saying, but he's a really nice man, even their friends. But he's a nice man. What are you talking about? And yet they end up dead or maimed or so demoralized that they are no use to their children and their community. Now, I can tell you that I personally know people who have gone through so much of this emotional, and in-laws as well can help the man, or so we are talking about culture is also involved.
Absolutely.
And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how this can happen to people because the perpetrator is backed by culture, is backed by friends and people around them, family, who think, oh, but he's not like that. Because at the end of the day, they don't live with you 24 hours. And an example I can give you is me. I was married before, and there were times when things were really tough. And I remember one day I was talking to my cousin, my beloved cousin, and I was trying to explain to her that, look, I mean, things are really tough, and I'm very unhappy and uncomfortable and blah blah blah. And she said, well, I mean, why can't you just talk to him? Why can't you? I mean, what is it that it is that you can't deal with? Why can't you just talk to him? Yeah, he can be a bit funny at times, but you have to be able to deal. And at that point, I realized that I have to take control of my own life. I realized that I have to deal with my own situations. And that's what I'm talking about, because people are out there and they may be in that same kind of situation, or even worse, they are being battered. I wasn't battered or anything like that, but they may be battered. Mine was an emotional game. And, so where do you then decide that, no, I am stronger than this? I am, I am a strong girl. I'm a big girl, and I manage my affairs. But I know hordes of women who, in view of customs, in view of culture, in view of fear of, you're married, in view of the stigma of divorce, in view of X, in view of Y, in view of children, they will stay in the marriage and may die in the marriage. That is the angle that I'm on. We need to deal with that. We need to talk about what should they do? How do you deal with it?
Okay. Firstly, we need to identify that whatever treatment that you're going through in the household is abuse. Because some people don't see it as abuse. Some people say that my husband loves me because he beats me. Because maybe they were brought up in an environment where their parents got physical with each other, or they witnessed some form of violence from somewhere. So some people actually consider it as the norm. But they are normally red flags. In the beginning of a relationship, when people are in love, they fail to spot some of these signs. The first one would be control, where the abuser, and it could be a man and it could be a woman, okay, it's not the violence or the abuse is not just coming from a man. Sometimes it could be coming from the woman as well. And a lot of marriages we go into simply because our culture expects a woman to be married at a certain age. Our culture expects a woman to be seen at weddings, funerals, outdoorings with a man. So sometimes we're not able to study the person's behavior or their character for any length of time. And we rush into these relationships without realizing the true character of that person. So whenever a person tries to control your behavior, your friends, your finances, move you away from situation or from maybe your friends and your family, know that this is a form of abuse in itself, because it's a situation that could then, it starts off with trying to isolate you from your friends, and then before you realize, he's digging away at your self-esteem. He's making you feel that he's the only person that you need in the whole wide world. And this can be done by using like threats, anger, excessive criticism. They can criticize, for example, your hair, your looks, your clothes, even the food that you make. And sometimes they can manipulate you. For example, they won't talk to you, they will not eat your food, and they just go out there to degrade you in front of others, or sometimes even in private. The purpose is simply to hurt you or to force a situation where you're financially and emotionally dependent on them. And that in itself means that you're not able to get up and run or get up and go.
Right. My thing is, so when all of that happens, because someone has put until they realize that it is enough, nobody can help them. And I agree with that. I think we ourselves need to realize that enough is enough. But the way that the world is changing, we are in such turmoil at the moment that if you are uncomfortable in your home, then seriously, enough should be enough. Now, when it is like that, people then consider, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? How am I going to look after my children?
That's
We
correct.
live this way because of his salary. We do this because of that. And I feel that it is true. The woman herself must be determined to move away from that situation. And when
Okay.
you do, okay, tell me.
We have Rights of Women. Rights of Women is an
Yeah.
organization that is in Old Street, and they have a helpline. And that helpline will tell you from A to Z everything that you need to know, from how you're going to be rehoused, where your kids are. Sometimes you have to leave. For example, if you live in London, you have to leave and go outside London because you need to run away, basically. So they will give
You need to
you,
be
be safe. Yeah, they'll give you your rights,
hmm
what you can do. If you've got immigration problems, they advise you on how you can get your leave to remain without your sponsor, because you can do
hmm
that. And they can explain to you about counseling or therapy, one-to-one therapy, that will empower you and strengthen you for you to be able to deal with any situation. Because sometimes one or both of you need anger management classes, sometimes. But there's often a
hmm
package, it's a combination, and they'll assess your situation based on whatever information you provide them, and then give you all the information that you need. So there's victim support, there's National Domestic Violence Helpline, there's Rights of Women, and they're all, I would say, national, in that you call them and they'll help you. If you can't make the call in the house, you can go outside and make that call, and it's free to call them. So it's something that we need to look at. I've got a list of their numbers that I can provide at the end
You
of
can put it
the show.
all inside of the Facebook. I'll
Yes,
put it everywhere. Put it inside
yes.
of the Facebook
I also wanted to
chat,
add,
and we
yeah,
will also put it on YouTube.
I wanted to add that withholding finances, withholding affection, not want, maybe because he'll go to the spare room and not want to sleep with you, and repeated infidelity also falls under emotionally abusive relationships. I mean, I know that a lot of us seem to accept that it's the norm for a Ghanaian man, because we're talking mostly about Ghanaians here, or maybe Africans, for a Ghanaian man to have multiple relationships or have more than one wife, even though in this country it's bigamy and it's illegal. Okay, you can't have more than one wife in this country. But I know that some Ghanaians still do, because they have what I'd say concubines or other partners, regardless of whatever marital situation that they're in. So repeated infidelity constitutes emotionally abusive relationships. It's something that perhaps we're not even aware of, a lot of women, because they think, well, our mums went through it, so why not? But it's wrong. It shouldn't happen. There's also verbal abuse. If he's constantly insulting you, demeaning you, humiliating you, it can be very damaging, and that in itself also is what I call emotional abuse. If they're telling hurtful jokes about you, even though you've asked them to stop, and constantly calling, swearing, questioning your sanity, ridiculing your opinions and desires, all these little things add up, and it's actually termed emotional abuse.
Emotional abuse, I know for a fact that it makes you start to second guess yourself. And a listener has put, some women have not only been physically abused but mentally. They've lost their confidence and identity. Please don't forget the men who suffer the same. Yeah, we'll talk about the men. The men are, it's men and women, but mostly women, the percentages are not balanced yet. We haven't got a balance of men are abused,
That's
but
right.
it's 10%. It's 10,
Yes.
less than 10% actually.
Mm.
So 90% of women in the world are being abused all the time.
Yes.
Now, the issue is how we deal with it. And so today that's what we're going to talk about. With men, I have an action line information. If you're a man and you're on this show and you're listening, let me deal with you now.
Okay.
There is, in this country, there is something called men's advice line.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ring up the advice line or you can email info@mensadviceline.org.uk. And you can email them and tell them what your situation is, or you can call them, or you can also call the Metropolitan Police or whoever it is that we're talking for the women as well, and they will deal with your issue same way.
Okay.
So men, it's not that I've left you out. I have it here. I've got the advice. I want to share it with you. Please seek help if you're being abused. It's more the women, the emotional beating, the emotional. You see, for a man to be able to continually beat you up and talk to you in such a way that is denigrating and demoralizing in front sometimes of your children,
Yes.
that is something we need to address at once. Someone is
Okay.
saying there is a kind of a subtle abuse as well. And yes, it is subtle. Sometimes it's subtle. You can be abused in a group. Your partner, you are all in a group, and your partner could say things to you, just you, within your earshot, nobody else's. That is so denigrating and that is so embarrassing, and it can confuse you amongst your friends and everything else. But people don't understand that it is happening to you. And even if they did, they'll think, oh, but he's playing. The truth is, this is what you suffer daily, so he can't be playing. And it is these issues that we need to talk about. We need to address them. And something that I keep saying, and one of the reasons why I come on air is, women, you need to strengthen yourself. You need to educate yourself. I know in some homes, once you're married, you can't even educate yourself because the man is afraid of your development. The man wants to keep you in a certain box. Therefore,
Okay.
we have to educate our daughters. We have to be
Yes.
sure that we start to educate our daughters. Now, somebody's suggesting counseling. My
Yes.
thing is,
The
how do you get
counseling.
out of the house to go for this counseling?
The
I
counseling
need
these days
advice.
is one-on-one. It's one-on-one and it's online. So if you don't know how to use a computer, you're right. It's very difficult. And if you can't get out of the house to go, of course, when the lockdown is lifted, if you can't go one-on-one, then it is difficult because you have to have some form of counseling. It can probably be done on the telephone, but the counselor or the therapist normally wants to see you, see your face, see like your reactions, and deal with whatever traumas that come up during this, for example, 1 hour, maybe 1 hour a week or 1 hour 3 times a week that you need. So yes, counseling can be helpful. It for us, it has to be appropriate to our culture because some counselors don't really understand where you're coming from. If you say you're wife number two and your husband's beating you up, they probably wouldn't understand. Why would you put yourself in a
Yeah,
situation like that? So we don't have many counselors that I know of in our community. I only know of one, but I know some psychologists and some therapists. So it's something that perhaps we need to compile a list that we can provide in case people need to speak to a therapist. But your first point of call will probably be your GP if you don't know anybody, or your local. We have local organizations such as in my area, we've got the Maya Center, we've got Mind, we've got Rethink. There are various organizations that provide you with a counselor. Some of it would be at a very low rate, maybe £2 a session, or £10 a session. we have specialist bereavement counselors out there. So if you do ask either social services, adult social services department, search online or speak to your GP, they will be able to provide you with a counselor that is not too far away from whatever postcode that you're at. So some people choose to go and see their pastor for the counseling. That in itself is entirely up to you. If it suits you, then fine. I find a lot of the pastors, our pastors, are probably not equipped enough in terms of psychological training to be able to assist you reach, I would say, a solution to whatever problem that you have. Now, in the run up to Christmas, we find that because people are cooped up in, even pre COVID, cooped up over the festive holidays, maybe for 10 days, tempers sometimes can rise up. And people are also drinking alcohol, eating a lot, probably not exercising. It can turn very, very quickly into fistfights and all kinds of difficulties. So it's something that we have to be aware of and see how best we can diffuse the situation. A lot of it depends upon the way we communicate. If you're able to start communicating early, start planning for Christmas itself, because Christmas can be quite tedious. What are you going to have on the dinner table? From the finances to the turkey, the veggie options, all these are important. Whether are you or are you not going to church? Are you going to be able to play maybe Monopoly or board games? What television programs are you going to watch? So if you're able to communicate, that helps. I mean, in the past, people used to have dinner together. Families used to have dinner together. So at the dinner table is when you would ask, how was your day? What's going on in your life? What are we doing for Christmas? Things like that. Some people tend to go away. But these days, with people having lost their jobs and people having very little money in their pocket, some people, it means that they may not be able to go to, for example, maybe to Ghana. Some people choose to go because of the weather being so cold and chilly here in England. Some people choose to travel to Africa or wherever it is that they want to go to for Christmas. And that in itself means that if we can't do that, it can cause tension and stress. And out of the stress, can easily escalate into domestic abuse.
Okay. Um. So you can't go to Ghana for Christmas. You can't do several things, and you're stuck with your partner. When you talk
Yes.
about, I'll give you another scenario because one of the things is I always feel as if this abuse issue, physical and emotional, these two
Mm-hmm.
are not
Mm-hmm.
addressed properly. The reason why I say this is the person abusing you may have low self-esteem. It's not you. The person
Okay.
abusing you may have so the person abusing you may be jealous, a jealous person. Now, this person, if you said to the person that, oh, okay, so he doesn't want to go for a walk, but because you are indoors and you're, blah blah blah, everyone is saying go for a walk or do some exercise, so you decide to go and walk outside or run, go around your block.
Yes.
He will think you've gone to meet someone. It can cause problems in your home.
Absolutely.
There are people who going to Sainsbury's brings problems in their homes. They are beaten because the man thinks she's going out to meet someone. There are people who the woman is at work and the man appears all of a sudden unannounced because he thinks you may be having an affair or you may be meeting some. These are the things we need to talk about.
They can consider
These
marriage
are the
guidance. There's an organization called Relate. But normally, where there's domestic abuse, we don't ask people to go for mediation because anything can happen even during the mediation. According to statistics, people who had made an attempt to leave the relationship or leave the household were the people that ranked high when they got to murder. murder, and then sometimes even murder-suicide. So when you want to try and leave a situation that is abusive, you have to be very, very careful and have a proper plan. So that there is what you call family therapy, there's group therapy, there's Relate, which is marriage guidance that is specifically for couples either married or cohabiting. Cohabiting means living together, that people can go to, and then they'll try and find options, ways where you can cope, or coping strategies in terms of communication, learning how to live
The
together. Because
question is,
yes,
if you are if you are married to or cohabiting with a man, an African man, full-blooded, very assured of himself, a total bully, and all of
yes,
those things, and you suggest to him that you should go for marriage guidance,
hmm,
are you telling me that he will go? He
some
won't go.
do, some do.
He is
The majority of the men don't want to go. Some would rather go to an elder in the community, a pastor, or one of their friends. So whichever way it goes, you have to be able to communicate. You try and resolve it between yourselves. But if you can't, then you have to consider which third party are you going to introduce into this. Some people tend to involve their parents. And with that, some parents are biased towards their, if it's their daughter or their son, they'll be biased. So this is why you try and look for an independent marriage guidance counselor who will be able to help you. But if that can't work, or you've tried everything and it doesn't work, then obviously you need to think about separation or divorce, which is normally the last resort. Because one of my friends was saying to me that a lot of our marriages that we go into are normally marriages of convenience. We're in there because maybe the person has money, the person has a house, or we're hoping to leave home. So we don't sit down and think it through before we jump into the sack with that person. And because it's like a marriage of convenience, it means that when troubles start, it's very, very difficult to find quick solutions. And some of these things, you can't get a quick solution because you have to contact victim support. They will give you a list of organizations to go to. You have to decide, okay, I'm in my life is in danger, so I have to dial 999, get the Metropolitan Police to come and take me or the man out of the situation. Because that's what tends to happen. If you call the police and they come to the household, normally the person who's a perpetrator is removed from the household to enable you have a good night's sleep. So they can end up in a police
okay.
station. Yes,
Okay. So then, but he will come back. The
he'll
majority
come
of
back.
our women allow them to come back. So that's
Yes, they do.
let's file that somewhere.
Okay,
My
what we do is
question,
sometimes you
because
can
our
seek an
time is now
injunction.
getting very
Yes, sometimes you can seek an injunction against them so that they cannot come back or come anywhere near you. You can do that. You go to court to do that. If you are afraid for yourself and your children, you're being harassed and you have nowhere to go, you can seek a court order so that he doesn't come anywhere near you. But often you find that you prepare the paperwork. By the time you get to the door of the court, the victim will say, "Oh, we've patched up. Sorry, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want him to end up getting a criminal record or whatever." So it is quite a difficult situation, and hence we advise people to seek some counseling so that empowers them to be able to cope. Because even being separate from their partners, they find it difficult, either emotionally or financially. They're dependent on them. Also, the children may be dependent on the man. So that means it's very, very difficult for people to get up and say, enough is enough, I'm leaving a relationship, even though they're being abused. There's also a lot of stigma attached to leaving a relationship because a lot of people seem to think that they'd failed in life if they can't keep a man. And that in itself is a problem, because if you can't stand on your own 2 feet, what are you going to do when one, he falls ill or he dies? You're going to fall apart. So we need to be able to have a life outside the marriage, in the sense, one, either you have a job, you have a hobby, you have friends, you have your own circle of friends, a network or support system that you can turn to for a chat, for tea or coffee, and communicate so that other people can support you.
Okay. So from all that you said, I mean, our time is running out. I think, did you invite someone called Danny Price? Does he want to speak on? If he does,
Yes.
I can allow him to come on to speak.
Please, yes. He's a professor in Virginia of criminology.
Hello, Danny. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. DEDE, I think there's something on you that is rustling against.
Okay, shall I take off the speaker?
Your speaker, something against your speaker. So okay, it stopped. Danny, you don't want to show your face. You want to be anonymous. The girls may like you and faint at your sight. So you make your point.
Yeah, it's okay this way. The reason is because I was out, just came back, and I'm not, properly dressed. So yeah, I haven't combed my hair. So I hope folks will understand. I'm sorry.
Okay. What is it that you want to contribute to the show? Did you listen to the whole show?
I listened to about 75% of the show. Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
What is your contribution, please?
Well, I think domestic violence is an issue that we need to talk about. Typically, females tend to be at the receiving end of abuse because men are naturally stronger. We have, upper body strength that we sometimes use to intimidate females, right? So, and domestic violence can occur between a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and even in marriages, right? Between a husband and a wife. Sometimes people get stressed out. Right now with COVID, people are so stressed out. Folks have lost their jobs, and when people lose their jobs, they tend to get upset, and the slightest thing, triggers, a negative reaction. So. I think that it's a great topic, and I know that lawyer Georgette did a great job talking about this issue. But this information needs to go out into the community, especially our African community. So, for example, in the United States where I live, if you strike a woman with your fist, you're going to jail. And if you go to jail and you end up with a criminal record, you won't be able to get a job. I don't know about the UK, but in the US, once you have a felony on your record, you're not going to be able to easily find a job because employers, when they do a background check on you and they find that you have a felony record, they will just skip your application and go to the next person. So not only should we not be hitting our women with our fists or punching them, but we should also realize that if we do that, we could end up with a criminal record, which means we won't be able to work in the United States. And if you can't work here as an immigrant, what are you going to do? You're going to have to pack your bags and go back to Ghana, because, there are no free meals anywhere, So our men need to understand this. Now, I grew up in Ghana. Maybe like you did, I don't know. But in Ghana, we tend to have what we call an androcentric society. An androcentric society it's a male-dominated society where the males are on top and the females are supposed to be submissive. The husband says this, she's supposed to jump, she's supposed to do whatever he wants. It doesn't work the same way in the United States, okay, or in the West. I'm sure it's the same thing with the UK. So when you come here with your male ego, prancing around like a lion,
exactly.
Fall apart, you better watch it because this system will tame you very quickly. This system will tame you very quickly. So I tell my folks, the men in this, just calm down, take it easy. Okay, there's no need for you to start, walking around with a big ego, because once you get into the criminal justice system, you're done. You're finished. And because we are black, right? And most of us have a foreign accent. We call it, in criminology, we call it double marginality. In other words, you have a foreign accent and you're also black. And we know that there's discrimination in America. So if you're black and you have a foreign accent, listen, the system is stacked up against you. So when you come here as an immigrant, behave yourself, follow the law. If you're with some woman that you no longer want to be with, just take your things and leave. Don't get into a fight. Don't strike her in the face. Don't punch her. First of all, that's wrong. But if you do that, you're going to get locked up, and you're going to get a criminal record, and that's it. You're done. You better just take your things and go back to Ghana.
Oh, Danny, that was so enlightening, and thank you.
Thank you.
Because that is serious information. This show is not for the UK or America alone.
Okay.
It is for Africans as well to hear this. And this goes on YouTube and it goes on the television. So people will hear it and they should hear it. And if you have friends or anything, pass it on to them, because we need to change our ways. I know a woman who tells her son in this country, UK, that, oh, don't mind her. If she misbehaves, just hit her once in a while. Just put her on the straight and narrow. Now, that is wrong. It is so wrong. And these things happen. They're subtle. Some of it is subtle. The other, what I know in practice is, you may be married to somebody who is really lovely to people on the outside. He's quiet generally. He's, so nobody knows the ferocity of his behavior. There's insidious things that he does to you to play with your mind, to make you think you're worthless, and then some of them to even beat them up. So it is that we need to address. Now, I need each of you to tell me what you think a simple solution. This is a big thing. And with big things, we always think that we need to do something mega to change it. I will start. My example of what I want you to think about is advice to give to people. I think we should educate our girl children. So the woman is the lawyer, the man is a lawyer. You are both there. Nobody's smarter than the other. That way, maybe you can work. Because a lot of the time, in my view, the man always thinks he's more successful, or he's better than, or he's richer than, or than. The in-laws always think it's the man who's making you dress the way you do, even when sometimes you're the one who's making your own money and doing your own work or feeding your own children. So my advice, my thought is, we need to educate the girl child. DEDE, what about you?
Yes. I believe that you're absolutely right. By having these discussions, it will help create awareness, because as a mother, the first thing you should do is to teach your daughters and also your sons, one, to respect each other and to recognize the signs of abuse. Because until you recognize that you're being abused, you don't know who to talk to about it. You don't know where to go or where to report it. So yes, we need to create awareness, and we need to explain to them the safe steps that they can take once they recognize that they're in an abusive relationship.
Thank you. What about you, Danny? What is your advice?
So I'm gonna drop a bombshell, okay? So everybody put on your seatbelt, because this is gonna shake a lot of folks, okay? So I once met an Ashanti man here in the United States, and he said to me, listen, I am an Ashanti man. I don't sweep and I don't wash dishes. I don't do any of these things. My wife has to cook. She has to clean. She has to sweep. She has to do the laundry. My job is to just go and eat, provide some money, but I can tell you that his wife also works. And I wouldn't be surprised if his wife makes more money than he does. It's possible, because I know the profession that the wife is in. Now, this mentality that we come here with, that I'm the boss, I won't lift a finger to do a thing in the house, it's all your job, The woman has to cook, has to clean, has to do everything. Listen, it's misdirected ego. In America, everybody's busy. Listen, I don't walk around saying I'm a college professor with a PhD, so my wife has to serve me every time. No, listen, I'll tell you this. I wash dishes, I do laundry, I clean, I cook, I make my own bed, I do everything that I would expect her to do. So if you're a guy and you're married or you're in a relationship and you're listening to me, please drop the ego and help. Your wife is not your slave. Don't you want her to get enough rest? She needs rest. So if she's not there, do the cleaning, do the sweeping, wash the dishes. It's not going to diminish you as a guy. If I hadn't told you, Kiki, that I wash dishes, would you know? You wouldn't know. Does it matter? It doesn't matter. Does it take anything away from me? No. I'm still Danny Price, okay? I'm still Danny Price. I'm still who I am. So when you are in the West, one of the ways that you can actually get rid of the tension and some of the stress is that help each other. Don't come here with this mentality, because in Ghana, some of the wives do not work. They are full-time stay-at-home moms. That's different. In the West, if she's working because you need the money to be able to support the lifestyle that you have, then why do you expect her to work and also do all of the domestic work? This is why we end up with issues. And then the man turns around and says, she doesn't respect me, she doesn't listen to me. But it's a different system. So show her some love by helping her out. In other words, if you love somebody, you will want to help them out. You would want to help them out. What if I love my wife? Why would I want to see her, struggling with all of the domestic work and then going to work? She's a human being. She's not a machine. Okay, so
I can answer that. I can answer that question. It is because when a woman loves a man, especially when he's a scallywaggy twat, he then begins to think that because this girl loves me, other women will also love me. And therefore, he then begins to strut about like a sick turkey. And this is where the issues start. So yes, I agree with everything you said. This is a show for women by women to women. And we love men to join in so that there is a balance. And today we've balanced. The time is up. I need to go. There's so much we can talk about, but I need to be within the hour so that the show can be on television within the hour and no bit should be cut out. So thank you very much, Danny Price.
Invite me next time. Invite me next time so I can start with you guys.
I will. I promise you that. And Georgette, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your views and thoughts and all that you've learned over time. Thank you both very well. My listeners.
Thank you, Georgette. You're doing a great job.
As usual, my listeners, I love you so much. And I thank you for staying with me, always coming on, listening, making comments. I need the comments. I love the comments. Thank you. This show is going to be on YouTube. I will send everyone copies of it. You can pass it on so that people can listen to this priceless information that we've received from Danny as well. Thank you very much. Be well. Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Bye.